We should get every detail right.
In total agreement.
Welcome back, my beautiful creatures of the night. If you're new here, I'm Maria, and I deep dive into the juicy, immortal drama of AMC's Interview with the Vampire. A few months ago, one of my subscribers left me a message that said, would you do a video of all the times you think there have been truth discrepancies in Interview with the Vampire? I sat on it for a long time, not gonna lie. I was mostly procrastinating, but eventually I realized that I had to do it. I need to share my thoughts on what I think was the truth, what was half-truth, and what was a straight-up lie. So here I am, combing through the entire show with a magnifying glass. Am I mixing metaphors here? To figure it all out. Episode 1. It's always bugged me that Louis says that Daniel has an autoimmune disorder.
And yet you got on a plane with an autoimmune disease in the middle of a pandemic.
Because Parkinson's is a neurodegenerative disease. I initially chalked it up to Louis not giving a damn about human illnesses, and that still works as an in-universe explanation. However, it all became clear once I read the original script. There, Daniel is said to have multiple sclerosis. But why change it, and why not adjust Louis' line to match? That's still a mystery. Then there's the timeline issue. The show opens in the fall of 1910.
The year was 1910, the fall of the 5th year of my father's passing.
The day after Louis pulls a knife on Paul, Grace says it's a month before my wedding day.
A month from my wedding day, and what do I dream about?
So the wedding is also in fall on winter. But Paul dies the day after her wedding, and on his tombstone we see May the 3rd, 1911. So the wedding was on May the 2nd, which means, was it postponed? Does time move by movie logic, or is it just a continuity error? Either way, inconsistency. And I know this is straight out of CinemaSins, and I hate that kind of nitpicking, but seriously, where did Lestat's stab wound go?
You think God had you, Louis, in that tawdry box? To this pig vessel!
I know vampires heal quickly, but do they mend clothes too? Episode 2. This is the episode with that infamous telepathy scene between Louis and Lestat that got retconned in the season 2 finale.
Sir, careful, mon cher. You're beginning to frighten the man.
But as Daniel points out, and to my shame, I didn't catch it the first time, makers and fledglings can't read each other's minds. It is framed in the finale as something we were supposed to question, but when the show corrected it, I felt like it was a patch for a mistake they only noticed after the eagle-eyed and eagle-eared fans pointed it out. Another major inconsistency, Lestat's timeline before he came to New Orleans.
Not another opera, Donizetti's comic masterpiece, Don Pasquale. I was an acquaintance of his, and I saw the premiere at the Salvento 73 years ago, and I remember it like it was yesterday.
Lestat says he was at the premiere of Don Pasquale in 1843, and that he was there when Donizetti wrote it. But in episode 207, he says he was buried in the ground for a century mourning Nicky, who died in 1796.
I buried myself in the dirt, Porte Neuilly, in the outskirts of Paris, and I lay there for 100 years.
You awoke in 1908, but even a century underground could not obliterate the pain of Nicolas' death.
So he was somehow both asleep and vibing in Paris in 1840s. Obviously, whatever was going on at the trial, we don't know half of it, and I'm sure it will be revised in later seasons, but I don't buy that Lestat was really asleep all that time. And, well, according to the book, he wasn't. Episode 3. Let's talk Lestat's victims. In The Vampire Lestat, he claims he mostly drank from evildoers, even back in New Orleans, and that Louis was just too guilt-ridden to notice. But in this episode, Lestat acts like drinking evildoers is a wild, radical idea.
How long do we wait before his bloody deeds reveal themselves?
As long as it takes.
You haven't thought this through, Louis?
Like he's never thought of it, like it's not something he also struggled with. It feels like this version of Lestat is deliberately darker, maybe to make him seem more deserving of what's coming. I wonder if some of his more reckless kills, like the baritone from the previous episode or the couple he hunted with Claudia, had more nuance. Unless season 3 retcons the whole thing, which honestly I doubt, we may never know. Also, as I said in my Music of the Vampire Lestat video, I don't think Lestat actually wrote Wolverine Blues, like Louis claims.
Yes, that's it.
Uh-huh.
Either Louis was hyping him up in front of Daniel or Lestat was hyping himself up back then. But crediting Wolverine Blues to Lestat instead of Jelly Roll Morton, I know, kind of offensive, but maybe it's just me. And then we've got Daniel's timeline. I don't think it can be considered a true discrepancy in the narrative of the show, but how are we supposed to accept Daniel's timeline if not with a truckload of suspicion?
I am in my Buick, staring in the rearview mirror at my daughter in the car seat, an hour after I gave Derek, a guy I don't know, the last $30 I had. My editor reminds me it's 7 years before car seats are mandatory. My ex-wife reminds me I never owned a Buick. This is the odyssey of recollection.
He's supposed to have his first child with Alice in 1985, as she was pregnant when he proposed. Yet in his book, he says he had a daughter in 1978, which is 7 years before car seats became mandatory in the United States. I go deeper into that in my Devil's Minion video, so check that out for more tea on these two. Oh, and of course, there was it raining scene.
Was it raining that night?
I got someone.
I figured as much. No ring on your finger?
Not a woman.
Did it rain?
I got someone.
I figured as much. No ring on your finger?
Not a woman. I don't remember now.
That one isn't even a subtle discrepancy, it's a flashing red light pointing at Louis' unreliable narration. What we're seeing in flashbacks isn't truth, it is his truth, a version crafted to justify his action and soften the blame. Episode 4. This one's easy. The true discrepancy here is acknowledged by the show. We see the first version of Claudia's turning, where Louis is more passive and Lestat is more monstrous.
And she'll be what? A lapdog?
Not a dog.
A daughter? You were ready to abandon our home. Now you want a third.
I just need her not to die. Please.
This version served its purpose in lessening Louis' agency in Claudia's turning, a tale that Louis told himself to make himself look or feel less accountable for her fate. But then in 207, we see the second version, the one that shows Louis condemning Claudia to the vampiric existence with full knowledge of what it would do to her.
She's of an age where her emotions will soar and plummet. Mountains and valleys every day of her life. I don't care! Well, you must care! Her mind and her spirit will age, but the world will treat her as she is now.
I'll burn her in the fire.
And she will be miserable, and you will love her, and it will spiral beyond your reach.
Drink up.
In that version, he's more selfish and Lestat more considerate. Another thing I noticed was the scene with Louis and Grace at the wake.
You forget what I did to that door, Grace? You should measure yourself.
The episode is based on Claudia's diaries, so who's narrating the confrontation between Louis and his sister? Was it Claudia overhearing it and then writing it down in her diary? Is it her version of events or Louis'? Either way, Louis comes off way crueler to Grace than ever before. Is that how he sees himself, as a monster? Or is that Claudia's lens, seeing him as a powerful father figure? Episode 5. Ah yes, the episode that split the fandom in half. This episode had the infamous fight and flight scene. The writers say it wasn't meant to be seen as domestic abuse. It was supposed to be just two supernatural creatures going toe to toe, hurting each other because they could. And that's how I saw it too. I've never viewed this show as a drama about social injustice or abuse. It's gothic horror. It's supposed to be disturbing. So the whole discourse around this issue is something I've been scratching my head over for a long time since the episode aired. Like, what did you expect from a show about monsters? That said, I get why people reacted the way they did. Just because something isn't intended to be seen that way doesn't mean it can be interpreted that way. Art is personal, reactions are valid. Maybe I just luckily haven't experienced anything like that in my life, so it's easier for me to look at it as it is without anything coloring my perception. But anyway, in the 207 revision, we see a more even fight until Lestat snaps and shows his superior power. And now the show is stuck. Book fans argue Lestat would never do that to Louis, and they're justified in that, and they weave intricate theories about Amel, of all things. I can expand on that in a separate video if you like. While show-only fans cancel anyone who even breathes positively about Lestat. It's chaos out there, and based on some hints, I think we're not done yet. There may be another version of that coming in season 3. Episode 6. Get ready for a deep dive.
Listen here. What is it? Germany's invaded Poland. Tanks rolling through the countryside. Horrors unleashed.
So, the radio broadcast announcing the invasion of Poland happened on September 3rd, 1939. Sunrise in New Orleans that time of year is around 6:30. Sunset is around 7:30. So Claudia had 11 hours to board the train, reach Birmingham, Alabama. It's 400 miles away, now an 8-hour ride on a train, and return home before Louis, who cut it close to sunrise. For Claudia to hit the timeline, she'd have to board the train immediately after sunset. The train had to be faster than the Crescent train today, and she'd have to go back with Lestat. How exactly? In his car? Did he fly her with her luggage? This scene had to have happened, obviously, but it's unlikely it happened as told, or the writers didn't care about the details. So either she didn't actually leave New Orleans, or this is another Louis filtered version. Probably both. Also, Antoinette stashed away in a hotel in Ponchatoula.
You got me stashed away here in Ponchatoula. How am I supposed to make a career here?
I seek refuge from complaints when I visit you.
I know. I didn't mean to make you mad. I love you, Lestat.
I love you too.
Ponchatoula is an hour's drive from New Orleans. Louis and Claudia can't fly, so they probably took the car. After the hotel scene, Louis and Claudia walk in New Orleans discussing what they saw.
I'm sorry, Louis.
They saw what it is.
He's the father of lies. If that's the kind of desperate trash he wants to love, then let him have it.
He doesn't love her.
And it begs the question, why didn't they talk in Ponchatoula or in the car on their way back? Instead, they drove all the way to NOLA, got out of the car, and only then went for a walk to discuss everything. I get why the scene had to be that way from the production perspective or from the Doyle's perspective. They had the NOLA set and would have to find something else for the supposed Ponchatoula, and filming in a moving car is expensive and difficult. But from the Watsonian perspective or the in-universe perspective, it doesn't add up. Oh, also, how did vampire as powerful as Lestat not sense Louis and Claudia nearby? So either he staged that scene on purpose, knowing they were there for some reason, or it didn't happen the way we saw, and possibly both. Episode 7. The murder night is full of inconsistencies. Daniel lays some of them out for us. Thank you, Daniel. But we're still only seeing fragments, filtered memories, altered recollections. There are two major reveals in the tale of Lestat's murder. First is that Louis and Claudia weren't on the same page about how to dispose of Lestat.
We need to burn him. I've killed so many, just... no one out. Sun's coming up.
No.
We have to burn him.
No.
It's the only way we'll know.
No! I said no!
Louis even chokes Claudia, echoing the abuse that he hated Lestat for. And second, Louis wasn't as chill about the whole thing and clearly regretted it, maybe immediately. We still haven't seen the scene from anyone else's point of view, not even during the trial, which is supposedly about this murder. Book canon suggests that Louis was even less tied in the planning and the execution of the murder. It was all Claudia's doing, and he was at best an unwilling accomplice, too weak-willed to go against her plan. When Claudia said in episode 4 of season 2,
"But you coloured it in for him. Painted a picture. Who did the poisoning? Who did the throat cutting?"
I thought that would be a clue, pointing at the later reveal that Claudia did both. And let's not forget, the show draws our attention to Claudia writing down Lestat's last words, and the show does it twice.
Moi dans mon souci, Louis, Louis.
Put me in my coffin, Louis, Louis.
In which your last words are recorded in your own blood.
But the funny thing is, we haven't actually seen Lestat saying those words. And really, could he with his throat cut? But who knows? We haven't seen it from his point of view yet, and oh, I'm sure it's going to be a blast. Also, inconsistent ages are driving me nuts. In a lesser show, I'd chalk it up to my favorite dismissal. It ain't that deep. But I don't want to think of Interview with the Vampire as a lesser show, so what's going on, fellas? In this episode, Lestat...
Lioncourt. 179 years in the Savage Garden. 148 years the Blood Drinker.
It means that he was turned at 31. But then he says...
Born 1760. I drank the waters in 1794.
That's 34 years old. Mathing. Same with Louis.
Born in 1878. I drank of the water in 1910.
He says he was born in 1878, but his tombstone says 1877. If it's actually 1878, as he says, then he wasn't 33 years old yet when he was turned, which contradicts his own statement in the first interview.
I was a 33-year-old man when I became a vampire.
So who's wrong, the writers, or is Louis just bad at remembering birthdays during his endless odyssey of recollection? And now, on to the second season. Episode 1. This episode plays around with discrepancies deliberately. Louis corrects himself mid-story, saying that as he's remembering,
we should get every detail right.
Yeah, you nailed Claudia's position in that random scene, Louis. Keep that energy. We see him nitpicking his own memories, adjusting dialogue, and realizing Claudia may not have been entirely truthful in her diaries, which is an interesting thing to keep in mind, considering how much of the earlier story came from her point of view. Episode 2. Gotta admit, not a lot of discrepancies in this one, but we do get this gem.
He said, I will not harm you.
And I never have.
He said, like a liar. Well, not physically, he hasn't harmed, which is the only way Armand counts harm, apparently. Also not a discrepancy, but I love Louis' subtle reaction when he remembers Lestat's letter. You can see the pieces clicking into place, that he might have painted a harsher version of Lestat in the interview than was entirely fair. It's the same look he gives in 207. It's like something's shifting. Episode 3. Now, this is a juicy one, because I think the whole first act is just one giant fanfic. Armand is making things up like his life depends on it. And maybe it does. Even setting aside that the 18th century flashbacks contradict book canon, Armand and Lestat's scenes still feel like a Wattpad story. Lestat comes off like an even bigger caricature of himself than in Louis' narration. Yes, according to the book, Lestat was drawn to Armand at first, but Armand tried to take Lestat by force, which ruined any chance of anything real. There weren't any love declarations at that point. Also, book Lestat would never be so cruel to Nikki, so either show Lestat is just colder than book Lestat, or this never happened. The balcony scene with Armand and Nikki suspiciously mirrors the Louis and Toinette scene from season 1. Maybe that was intentional to make us question both scenes. Also, Gabrielle, Lestat's mother, is missing. She was central in book canon, but not even a mention here. Of course, it can be explained as the production issue. The show just didn't want to cast Gabrielle yet, but they did cast Nikki, who's going to have a big part in season 3, so why not her? So maybe it's just Armand being Armand, trying to make himself look like the most important person in Lestat's life at the time, which he very much wasn't. Episode 4. Okay, but is anyone going to tell me why are vampires dining at a restaurant? They don't mingle with humans, they don't eat or drink, so why are they at a fancy dinner table pretending to sip wine? What was the coven even doing there? Practicing restraint? Planning to snack on the whole dining room later? it doesn't really track with anything we've been told so far. It's not a direct inconsistency, but very out of character. As for Armand's tragic backstory, most of it is book accurate, but there's one part that made readers pause. It's Marius donating Amadeo to other artists. I'm not here to defend Marius's lack of honor, since he's very messed up, and that's generally how I like my gothic vampires, but it looks like the writers of the show decided to put Armand through even more horrors than in the books, where he was taken from the brothel by Marius without ever having to actually work there, and Marius did send him to brothels later to learn, which is also messed up, but it's not what Armand claims here. Also, those Santiago scenes at the end, whose point of view are we seeing again? I know that we as the audience had to see this, and there was probably no way to present it through Louise or Armand's point of view, so it's a bit nitpicky. But if you consider the fact that Armand was in on it, then it makes sense. We're seeing what Santiago told him, But still, a little foggy. Episode 5. This episode is basically one big memory hole. Trying to stitch a coherent story from Louis and Daniel's accounts is a nightmare for them and for us. First, there are obvious discrepancies, like, for example, Daniel's position during different parts of Armand's speech to Louis.
Meaningless word. Meaningless. The floor slants slightly north. The boy's blood flowed that way. We should fix that before we sell. Meaningless. A neighbor saw you while he was taking out the trash. I had to chase him down. The floor slants slightly north. The boy's blood flowed that way.
But then there's bigger stuff, like whose point of view are we watching when Armand calls Lestat?
I love you, Lou. Tell him, Armand. Tell him. Louis? Louis? Louis?
Louis can hear him, and Armand isn't the one narrating, yet we hear Lestat's words and see Armand choosing not to pass them along. So is this Louis just extrapolating, or is it a scene from a neutral point of view? Well, not so much, I think. So far, the only unbiased scenes are the modern day ones, because no one is telling them, we just watch them, like Talamasca. Flashbacks, though, everything is up in the air with them. Episode 6. The shocking to no book reader reveal that Armand directed the play retroactively casts doubt on everything he said before, on every scene with his supposed feud with the Coven. We can surmise that the Coven did pose an ultimatum for Armand, and that he chose. So up to that point, his flashbacks could be more or less reliable. But after, we were shown the version that he made up for Louis, that he broke up with the Coven after Madeleine's turning and had nothing to do with the trial play. But we know that it was all BS and that Armand was in charge the whole time. So all the Coven scenes now feel like stage theater. Was Santiago actually throwing tantrums, or was it just Armand's exaggeration? And what happened to that ripoff Waiting for Godot play? Armand said that they were working on it, but they were writing and rehearsing the trial all alone, right? Or were they multitasking? Also, there's the Sausalito shower gate.
I asked you to erase it? Yes. After you came out of a shower in our home in Sausalito. 3 days after we abandoned him.
Louis had severe burns, so why would he take a shower 3 days after they dropped Daniel in the drug den? And assuming that he did take that shower and ask Armand would have to erase his memories sometime after that, because if Armand wiped his memory right after the shower, the burns would still be there. So what would be the point? Episode 7. I've mentioned a couple of things from this episode. Lestat's 100-year nap contradicts season 1, and the infamous fight was retconned to show Louis as more than just a victim. But this entire episode is essentially one giant discrepancy. Let's start with what we know didn't happen. First, Armand wasn't being held captive by big, mean vampire Sam. It's laughable. I don't know why Louis even believed that. Armand was actually chilling in one of the best seats of the house. Second, it was Lestat who mind-controlled the audience to spare Louis.
Banishment.
Banishment.
Banishment!
Banishment.
Banishment!
Banishment.
Banishment! Banishment!
As established by season 1, it takes so much out of him that he knew if he tried it first with Claudia, he would have no power left for Louis, so he chose. But outside of that, there are even more questions, like, for example, was Lestat being controlled at the trial? He looked wobbly in places. Was someone holding him in place? Also, why didn't we see a revised version of Murder Night at the trial? That was the crime, right? Yet we get no flashback, no alternate version. Also, Claudia and Madeleine's final moments are narrated by Armand. That's a red flag, especially considering what he admits in The Vampire Armand. Episode 8. So we've made it to the grand finale, and boy, we're still swimming in inconsistencies. First, Armand's tale of humiliation and losing his power to Santiago. Does it make sense? He directed the trial, he did what the Coven wanted, so why would he suddenly be overthrown? Power dynamics don't shift like that unless someone fails. So that's a straight up lie. I'm onto you, Armand. Another scene that reeks of that didn't happen energy is the tower scene with our cursed throuple. Armand, Louis, and Lestat hashing it out in the place where Lestat was turned. My question, why would Lestat even go there willingly? That place was a trauma pit for him, yet he's like, I came here to think on my origins and why I do what I do. When I first saw promo shots of this scene, I was sure Lestat was being held captive there. I thought it was a glimpse at Armand's manipulation of weakened Lestat before the trial, or a nod at the scene from the books where Armand pushes Lestat off the tower, because Armand was still holding a grudge against Lestat for ruining his coven and majorly for rejecting him. But no, in the show it played out completely differently. Thankfully, the show, as usual, gave more agency to Louis, and Louis choosing Armand over Lestat and metaphorically killing him was poetic cinema. But the vibes were off, I can't explain it, they just were. There's a theory that Louis pushed Lestat off the tower instead of Armand, but why would he lie about that now, or why would Armand alter this memory? I'm guessing we haven't seen the last of this tower. I think it may also be revisited, since Lestat's relatively good spirits and general well-being here is at odds with what we glimpsed during the trial or read in the book. And finally, the New Orleans reunion. Now, it's not a flashback and it's shot like Dubai scenes, neutral camera, not tied to anyone's point of view. I take it as it is, but some fans don't. For one reason. This is a famously contested scene in the books. In the interview with Vampire Book, Louis claims that he met Hermit Lestat shriveling in Nola, a pathetic creature barely existing. However, in The Vampire Lestat, Lestat denies meeting Louis there. The reunion deniers also latch on to the fact that there was no Hurricane Odette in 2022. But I mean, yes, the show featured the real pandemic, but is it so unusual to just make things up to enhance the narrative? Because the show repurposed that book moment into a beautifully dramatic, heart-wrenching ending. Louis and Lestat safe in the eye of the storm while the world crashes down around them. Again, poetic cinema. So there you have it. I've compiled all the ways this beautifully messy show plays fast and loose with the truth. What did I miss? What do you think about all these discrepancies? Drop your theories in the comments. And if you enjoyed this chaotic ride through vampire memory holes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell. Stay unbothered and keep your stories straight. Or not. Bye-bye!